Today on this episode of The Brain Surgeon's Take, we will be discussing Never Settle, combining two careers with board-certified cardiologist and Hollywood, New York City actor, Dr. Rico Simonini. Learn how this multifaceted individual was able to succeed in two completely different careers that each require extreme focus and dedication. The moral of the story here is to follow your passions and never let others impose limits on your goals. Much more on this podcast episode. Welcome back, everyone. Here's my take on Dr. Rico Simonini. He is the epitome of a Renaissance man. He is not only talented enough to become both a renowned cardiologist and recognized actor, but he also has the work ethic to follow through and succeed in both these fields. We are all told to follow your dreams when deciding what career to pursue. But what if you have two passions? Do you need to make a tough decision and pick one? Well, as Rico tells us, clearly not. This interview was inspiring for me. Rico's story is a reminder that limits are all self-imposed. His drive to become the best at two very different professions should motivate us to always aim higher and never let others deter your goals. The world is a competitive environment, but the sooner you realize success is just a mind game, the sooner you will optimize your potential. Listen up as we discuss Never Settle, combining two careers. Check it out. Hey, Rico, how you doing?
Hey, great to be here.
Listen, man, great to have you on the podcast. I'm excited to talk to you about your two amazing careers, one being a nationally recognized board-certified cardiologist, and the other is a Hollywood, New York City actor. I've never seen anyone pull off both of those careers simultaneously, but I'm excited to talk to you about how you did it.
Hey, glad to be here. It's been it's quite a journey, but in a way it makes sense. I mean, if we were living 500 years ago, they would say, yeah, sure, of course. You know, because think about it, Da Vinci and those guys were artists, and they were also grave robbing and drawing anatomy and discovering the secrets of circulation in the human body. So it's a precedent, so say.
Well, let me ask you, let's start with how you first got interested in medicine.
Well, I was a little kid growing up in Brooklyn, and I grew up in this very animated household. My father was played horses and bet football and gambled, and my mother was frustrated. So our house was like an opera. My mom screaming at my dad trying to watch a football game. And I'd escape to the public library. And I was fascinated with there was this book, Your Heart and How It Works. I was like 6 years old, and it was illustrated by DeBakey, of all people. And there was this picture of a guy standing on the earth and showing arteries coming out of his heart going to the moon. And it says, if all your arteries are placed end to end, they go to the moon and back 3 times. And I said, wow, this is cool. I want to learn about medicine. I want to learn about science. So I became the science nerd. So throughout grammar school, you know, I'd be in the science fair. And I had this thing, because we didn't have any money growing up because my dad's gambling. I'd find the kids who were flunking science and listen, I need you to get me a dry cell battery, some coils and helium, and we could build a laser. And every year I'd enter these crazy things in the science fair. So I love science. So that's kind of how the whole interest in medicine came about.
And what about acting? How did acting come into play? Was that later on?
Acting is always kind of been in the background. I mean, so because of my father's lifestyle, you know, he was a nightclub restaurant guy, and he wouldn't come home till like 6, 7 in the morning. So I would sit with my mom late night and watch movies until the sun came up. And basically, like I said, we didn't have money. We didn't really travel. We sat in this like 5-room apartment in Brooklyn, worried if the lights are going to shut off, the phone's going to get disconnected. But in the movies, I mean, I got to travel places. I got to see a world that we didn't have. And my mom like pulled me into that because she was a dreamer, and she'd say, look at that. See what happens when people are together, and you see, like, you know, the good guy wins and love prevails and the big kiss at the end and roll credits. So I got pulled into that, but I was like a fat kid with braces and glasses. So there's no way I was to get on stage back then, but I just loved films. And I would, every now and then I would volunteer to do school plays. I just liked the idea. I was a shy kid, except when I was on stage, I wasn't shy. So it was kind of there in the background. And then when I went to high school, I went to a Jesuit high school in Manhattan, Xavier High School. And they said, it doesn't matter which one, being for your career. You have to learn the Shakespeare, and you have to learn plays. And I had a teacher made me learn a soliloquy a week. So every week, stand up and, you should have died hereafter. And so I got pulled into learning Shakespeare and then Ibsen, and then I read Chekhov. I go, wait, Chekhov was a doctor. This is pretty cool. There's a guy who was a doctor who wrote these amazing plays. So it was always like kind of put in front of me as you want to be this guy that understands the art. But I never really thought about being in front of a camera or theater. I just didn't think. I always thought who'd want to watch me. But that's how it was growing up.
Now, what about challenges, right? Every person chasing a dream faces challenges. What was the biggest challenge you faced in your pursuit of becoming a doctor?
Oh, I mean, I've had all the challenges. I mean, we grew up broke. I mean, it was my father used to brag about how many hundreds of thousands of dollars he burned gambling on sports and card games, and that was a challenge. With this kid, we grew up on basically food stamps and welfare, and there was nobody in the family who was a doctor. It was basically me on my own saying, "Hey, I want to do medicine, and I want to be great at science." And in the neighborhood, with most of the kids in my neighborhood, like they didn't do that. I mean, the guys looking to like drive a Cadillac and hang out with guys at a certain club with pinky rings. It was a whole world that I was trying to get away from. And the biggest challenge is my dad was in that world, I mean, as a kid, I mean, when I was 6 years old, I got my communion, right? And my father's like, "See that little guy over there? Go kiss his ring and tell him you made your first communion." Okay. So I went up there, very shy, and I spoke in Italian. The guy patted my head and gave me $100 bill. It was Carlo Gambino. So to me, that was my dad's world, So to me, it was to get away from that. And I had, we had no money. So it came time to go to high school. I worked nights. And after school, I started making pizzas in downtown Brooklyn. I started waiting tables. So, every kid was doing stuff and cutting up and doing crazy stuff. And I was like just going to school, working night, bringing my calculus book in the subway, and reading my literature in the subway. I mean, that was the challenge, is trying to focus on work, paying tuition, and keeping it going. And there's really nobody to get advice from, because nobody in my family had really had done that. So a lot of obstacles.
That's amazing that you came out of that. What would you say about acting? Biggest challenge for you in your pursuit of acting?
Yeah, that's a more circuitous route. I guess part of it was being comfortable with myself. It's funny. The thing you're trying to teach actors, be yourself, right? And one of the hardest things for an actor auditioning or coming up is thinking that they're not good enough just being themselves. So they try to act like somebody else. And given the way I grew up, and there's all these insecurities that come in, because you always feel you're fighting to stay along with everybody else, because you didn't grow up the same way, had the same blessings or privileges or all that, and you feel like you're going to find me out, But acting, that's that thing too. So you have to. The hardest thing is really just being comfortable. And ironically, it was coming out to LA that my patients are the ones that kind of pulled me into it. They said, "Look at you. You're from New York. You sound like you do. You're tall. You got to act." And I said, "What are you talking about? You got to listen to your heart. Just when you listen to your heart, no, forget that. Do this, And so they kind of pulled me in, and just to kind of let go. And it's the magical thing is, once you let go, it's like it's freedom. So it became a place I felt like a kid going into that TV screen again, and exploring those worlds again, and being free to just kind of be different people, do different things. So that's the hardest thing, as far as just performing.
Now, what if you couldn't do cardiology? Let's say cardiology didn't exist. What other specialty were you considering?
That's funny, because when I was a kid wanting to be a doctor, I actually thought about orthopedic surgery. That was the first thing I thought about, because I was the heavy kid that never got picked. They pick everybody else. They pick the kid in the wheelchair. They pick the janitor and say, "Oh, geez, all right, yes, you can take Simonini. Go ahead." And they stick me in, like, not right field, like deep right field. So no balls ever went. So, but I wanted to developing a good arm. I'd throw the ball from, like, the next county. But somewhere in med school, my dad had his first heart attack. And so, and he basically took him to this little Brooklyn hospital, and they didn't have a cath lab. And I went to go see him, and he had these tombstone elevations on his EKG. He was having pain. And the ER doc, I'm saying, what's going on here? He said, well, we don't have a cath lab, so we're waiting for transferring him. I go, well, what are you going to do in the meantime? He goes, nothing. We just have to wait for a bed. I said, but he's dying. I mean, you have to time his muscle. You got to do something here. And so I said, you have to give him thrombolytics. And they said, well, we have it, but it's really, really expensive. And I don't really feel comfortable giving it as an ER doctor. And the cardiologist on call is like, won't be in for 2 hours. I said, no, you have to give him this drug. And he's going to die without this. And the guy said, hey, I don't feel comfortable. So I literally became my dad. I became my dad to half a gangster. I said, hey, you don't give him this drug, I'm going to call some of my father's friends. I'm going to wish you did. And literally, he went white as a ghost, gave my father the TPA. I saw the EKG normalize, and the pain went away, and I saved him. And then I had him transferred to where I was in med school, and wind up taking care of him, saving his life, and spending the next 25 years saving my dad's life over and over again, whether it was from an aneurysm, stroke, or VFib. And I realized then, I go, it's my calling to help guys like my dad who kind of get left in the corner of an ER having chest pain. So yeah, I went from this dream of being a sports doctor, I couldn't be a jock, so I could treat jocks, to like now taking care of the heart. So that was, it wasn't about cardiology at the beginning.
What a cool story, saving your dad like that. Did you ever consider dropping one of the professions? Was there ever a point where either you thought you couldn't do one or it was too much to do both?
No, I mean, the thing. I mean, think about each of the professions. There's the politics and the work you have to do. Even in academic medicine, there's things you have to do to be in certain places. And then I remember working in research labs, creating a knockout mouse, because that was my job. Okay, you got to knock out this receptor, and that takes 6 months to do that, by the way. So that's not an easy thing to do. And those things bite, and then they published a whole bunch of papers using this mouse that I, used my sweat and tears and lost my, skin cloning. And my name wasn't mentioned in any of the papers. And I said, wait a second, shouldn't I be one of these authors? They go, no, you just gave technical support. It's different. So, yeah, sure. There's times when the politics and the gamesmanship kind of like gets to you, and you say, what am I doing? But then if the goal is, when you walk into a room, you could tell somebody you're going to be okay, and you tell the kids grandma's coming home for the holidays, don't worry about it. That makes it kind of go away. And with acting, I guess the thing about it is that I never did it for the money. I did it for the love of the energy it gives me. So a lot of what I do is theater, which doesn't pay anything. And people say, wow, why do you want to do this? There's no money in theater. Because I get to be on the boards and do something for 2 hours, take a trip and come back. So it was never about money. I guess if it was about trying to, have a career where you sustain a lifestyle, yeah, that could be frustrating. But I've been lucky to not have to worry about that, So yeah, I could see where in each of the fields that the politics, I mean, I could tell you stories. I mean, I got involved in litigating against Merck Pharmaceuticals. I was a young faculty, and Merck wanted to fund my lab and all that, and all I had to do was approve this new arthritis drug. And I looked at the drug and said, you know what, I can't, because there's problems, and you guys maybe should take a look at this. And they kind of looked at me askance and kind of didn't fund my lab. And then 3-4 years later, the drug came out, and a year later, I'm testifying in court against a big, multi-billion-dollar corporation, saying corporate malfeasance and pharmaceutical malfeasance, and that could turn you off to medicine, right? Having these things happen, but so yeah, I mean, things happen along the way, which show you that we're all human, right? We're all capable of these inner echoes of our soul. And as my dad used to say, hey, my friends don't lie about being gangsters. The people you work for, I don't know.
No, I would say I agree with you in the sense that if you pick a profession for the right reason and you never forget why you went into it, it makes it a lot easier. It's easier to get lost.
Yeah.
And like you said, get distracted by stuff that doesn't really matter. And it sounds like for you, you always remembered why you went into acting and why you went into medicine, and you didn't lose that. And that obviously helped you get through. Kind of compare the two fields. How are medicine and acting similar?
You know what? They're very similar. It's kind of interesting. So, one of the greatest detective writers, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, created Sherlock Holmes. Well, he was a physician. So the entire way of deductive reasoning that Holmes would do with the help of Dr. Watson was actually differential diagnosis of a physician. And if you think about what makes a good actor, okay, is being present in the moment and listening and being aware of what's happening. So it makes a great doctor one who listens, who's in the room and is not just looking at a chart or looking at a CT scan or looking at an echo, is looking at the patient right in the eye and listening to what they're telling them, because that's the key to connecting with the patient. That's the key to making the diagnosis. And I can't tell you how this year, 3 times as a cardiologist, I diagnosed cholecystitis on a patient, and I've had someone in the ER say, "Hey, the CAT scan looks fine." I said, "Did you look at him? Did you put your hand on the belly? Did you listen to the story?" And then the surgeon comes in, there's a gangrenous gallbladder. I mean, so it's about listening, being in the moment, and connecting. And that's, to be a great actor, you have to do that, and to be a great physician, you have to do that.
How are the fields different now?
Well, they're different. I mean, you can think of a world of differences, but for me, when you're an actor, you can take chances. You could throw caution to the wind and not and leap. The net will appear, because when mistakes happen in theater, when mistakes happen on camera, they become gold. Like some of the best movie scenes that we see were like unscripted, where something just happened, or the camera kept rolling. I could tell you lots of stories behind the scenes where, one of my favorites, lots of stories. Among the stories, one of my patients was an intern on The Godfather, so you watched him shoot that behind the scenes. He stood behind Coppola while he was shooting, and there's a famous scene where the actor playing Luca Brasi, was there talking to himself. And Michael, that scary man's talking to himself. Well, what happened in real life is that the actor who had to do the scene with Marlon Brando was so scared. Oh my God, I was with Brando. He was basically reading his lines and rehearsing by himself in the corner and just trying to make sure he had the lines right when he went to do the scene.
Uh-huh.
And Coppola, he was mic'd up, so Coppola heard, wait a second. And he turned the camera on the guy. He had no idea it was being recorded. And they just recorded him naturally sitting there, just being nervous and rehearsing his own lines, because he was afraid, oh my God, I'm going to do a scene with Marlon Brando, the great actor. And Coppola just caught him on camera. He had no idea. And look, that's a great scene, because in the scene, it's like, wow, this big scary gangster is afraid to go talk to Don Corleone. Look at this. But it was really, the actor was afraid about forgetting his lines with Brando. So there's happy accidents that happen. In medicine, you don't get to be, loose and free. You have to kind of, there's a program, even the doctors who tend to improvise, like especially, I guess, as a surgeon, there's moments where you have to improvise because it's not all there, but you have to, it's like I tell people, Miles Davis, first went to Juilliard, but then he improvised afterwards. So with medicine, you have to first get the training and the schooling and understand, and then you could go out of the box. And then, I think in a lot of the science that we learn in medicine, especially in the drugs we use, and my specialty is also heart failure. A lot of drugs in heart failure were counterintuitive at the beginning. And so somebody said, wait a second, let's go out of the box and think about it. So that's the main difference, in the discipline, the approach, and when you're allowed to go off the rails.
Now, what about the personal satisfactions that you get from each profession? Kind of compare them, right? Both fields seem like they can give you a lot of personal satisfaction, of course. How are the what you get in return for the work you put in different for those fields?
Well, in theater. At the end of the night, there's an audience that's standing up, clapping and cheering, and if you do something right, you've kind of changed them. You gave them something to think about, and you've changed 50, 100, 1,000 people, or if you're lucky, 5,000 people in an audience. In medicine, it's person to person. So you change one person, and you change their family and their life, and it becomes like collective, like cumulative. As you go from patient to patient, I mean, in both places, it's by example. Maybe you inspire somebody to strive for the same things because they see what you did for a person and you help them. The same way you could have an audience member react to what you do on stage. But basically, it's one on one in medicine. So you go, and it's more personal because you're right there and you're dealing with the patient and the problem, and you're changing one person's life. Um, and in acting, it's you're a little more removed because the audience is out there. But I tell you, I can't tell you how many patients I met in theater and how many patients I met doing a movie. I mean, one of my uh, actually, I did a movie by Frank Sinatra, and the composer of the film, he met me and he said, "This is very strange. I got this the leading actor is also a cardiologist." And then I get this phone call one morning at 3 a.m. He goes, "Rico, I woke up with intense chest pain." And I said, "My God, I know exactly who to call, the actor in my movie." and, and he came in, he had a tight LED, and we fixed him. So there've been, I would say about 20% of my practice are people I've met on set, or one lady. I once did a play where I portrayed a gangster. Had a lot of exposure, so it's very easy to portray one. And at the end of the first act, I had to cut somebody's throat. He was in the barber chair with the towel over his head, and I come up behind him. He's talking about this, he's going to take his girl out and blah blah blah. And then the lights go dim and there's a strobe like the overhead subway, and eerie music. And I said, Anastasia sends his regards. And I slash his throat and hear the guy gurgle, lights out, he's dead. I'd say 10 times during the run of the show, people fainted at the end of that scene. And if there was no effect, there was no real, no blood scene, nothing, just the idea of this guy was about to slice this guy's throat, and then the lights went out. They heard him gurgle, and so, oh my God, he killed him. And then who they call? Hey, Rico, this lady in the first row fainted. He goes, and so I walk up there. I'm like, checking their pulse. He goes, oh my God, no, you're the one that killed him. Get away from me. Something like that. So it became my patient as well. So it's been interesting cross-linking everything.
Everyone talks about how difficult it is to get that break in acting. How did you get your first break, and how difficult was it?
I tell you, my first break was because of a patient I was seeing in the office. He had to get his physical, and so we're talking, and I was doing A Few Good Men at a theater out in the Palisades. I was playing Kathy. I was playing the lead, and so at the end of the consult, I said, he was from Ireland. So I said, so you going back to Dublin? He goes, now I'm going to see a Sorkin play. I love Sorkin. I got to hurry up. I have 2 hours to make curtain. I'm like, really? I go, well, I heard it's a pretty good show. He didn't say a word. And he's in the audience, and he comes backstage. He goes, you're the lead in this play, and you're my doctor. That's great. I'm going to put you in my next film. It's going to be great. And boom, that became my first big movie. It was Max Payne, was a movie with Wahlberg. So it just kind of serendipitous, that it's something, that happened. And then what happened is people would come to the plays and give me other things to do. So I became a member of the Actors Studio. People would write plays with me in mind. Hey, I wrote this scene I want you to do. You're playing this guy, and then Sinatra became Sinatra was a story. I was one of my patients is also a salty Sicilian guy named Tommy, whose life I saved. Same thing. I met him in the theater. He was wheezing. I go, why are you breathing funny? I smoked for 50 years. And I come to my office. Why? What were you? I'm a cardiologist. Get out of here. So I came in, I saved him, got 2 cents. And so there's this play going on called Berlin Cowboys. It's about what happened in the Cold War and how a Russian double agent actually totally fooled the Americans and deflected, and we had no idea that the Berlin Wall was about to go up. So it's a true story how the Berlin Wall came up. And the lead actor had to be this Greek guy who could speak Russian, speak Greek. And I guess he was giving the director trouble, the writer trouble, because he was so perfect for the role. He did speak fluent Greek and Russian. I guess he used that to hold him hostage. And so with 2 weeks before opening, I guess the writer or director was talking to Tom. He goes, this guy's driving us nuts, and I would love to replace him, but who else is going to learn this play in 2 weeks? My doctor, your doctor. Yeah, he's like, man, you're a smart guy's an actor. He's great. I love him. So I come in, and then next thing you know, my name is Kostas. I'm from Thessalonica, and I became this Greek guy who wound up solving the problem. So I became a hero to this guy. And the play was great, it was a success. And then he says, listen, I'm going to write a play more for you. It's about Frank Sinatra, and I want you to play Frank. And that became Frank and Ava. So, the breaks happen by just doing work, by just doing things. It's really, that's really the story, the lesson. Just keep in motion, obvious in motion, stay in motion. It's like, it's not always Shelley MacLaine getting discovered, on stage when she went on for, I forget the story she went on. Somebody broke her ankle and she went on and she got discovered on stage. But it's not always like that. But sometimes just by working, just getting out there and working in a small little theater in a place no one's ever heard of, you'd be surprised who comes watch.
Yeah, I think people use the term luck a little bit too easily. I think a lot of times, oh, I got lucky. You obviously didn't get lucky. You worked your ass off. And when you work that hard and you're consistent and you're putting in the effort, usually things work out in your favor. And I think that's a better term than luck. So that's clearly why you got that break and why you built off of it. You answered this question before, but I'm going to ask it in a different way. Do you feel that being a doctor makes you a better actor? And does being an actor make you a better doctor?
I'd say yes to both. I'd say definitely being an actor makes somebody a better doctor because, once again, the skills in acting is about being in the moment and listening, and just being hungry for what's happening in the moment. And if you want to be a good diagnostician, that's what you have to be. You have to walk into a room and say, okay, what's going on? And don't listen to other people's telling you. The thing about acting is that people make a mistake by having a preconceived notion. Okay, I got to be angry. I got to say this. I got to sound like this. And no, no. You have to be organic in the moment. Same thing when you're seeing a patient for the first time. You want to take your own history. You don't want to sit there and hear what everybody else has to say, and you want to get your impression, because that's where the gold is, and that's where that's the difference between being good and great. It's like you could be there and listen, and you may pick up something no one else picked up. And that's so being an actor would definitely make you a better doctor. And being a doctor, in a way, the discipline that it takes, the commitment that it takes, that also makes you a better actor, because it's all about commitment. It's all about not seeing results immediately, right? You could have a difficult case, and you may not see the results immediately. You may not have the answer immediately, but you have to continue. You have to just keep pushing. And I think that same kind of discipline, if you apply that to theater, that will result in success. It's a big difference between American actors and British actors. In Britain, it's a profession. It's like it's a trade, it's a craft, and you work at it. And it's not about getting famous. It's about learning and learning and learning. And that's why when they come over, they're playing American accents. They're doing all these things because it's this discipline they've been working on for years. It's not like someone woke up in Iowa, decided to come to LA, and they want to get discovered and be famous. It's something. It's like lunch pail. You go to work every day and learn. And today you play the usher. Tomorrow you play the bank manager. The next day you play the lead. It's just work. And if you treat it as work and a craft and something you're trying to master, and you never, look, this is a similarity. You never fully master acting. The same way you never fully master medicine. It's always changing. You're always changing. So it's a pursuit of something that can never be solved. It's just a moving target, and that's what's great about it. If you look at it that way, you're not going to be bored. You're going to say, "Hey, the journey's been great." And it's not about, did I win an Oscar? Did I get famous? Did I get a Nobel Prize? It's the journey.
And I totally agree with what you're saying about discipline, because discipline is, in my opinion, that's the key to success no matter what you do. And I agree, both acting and medicine require a high level of discipline to get to where you want to go. Who were your biggest role models, both in medicine and in acting, as you were coming up?
Oh wow, interesting. Because the role models, of course, I used to see these videos of DeBakey doing life changing surgeries, and it's wow, a a man could change someone's life that way. And these are all, of course, from afar. And I got to meet him. Like, wow, it's like meeting Mickey Mantle, like as a kid. And in acting, it's funny. I got to meet them too. So ironically, some of my favorite movies that I watched as a kid, I got to meet the stars. So of course, as a kid, you watch The Godfather, and now I know Al Pacino. I watched Goodfellas. I know Scorsese. I know De Niro. I know Pesci. And then one of my favorite movies was The Pope of Greenwich Village, and Eric Robertson was a very good friend of mine. I wound up saving his life. So those are all people that whose work I admired, and I got to do a movie with Eric, like I think 6 movies with Eric Roberts. So that's kind of talk about a journey, right? So yeah, those are some of the people I admire. And I got to work with some of the great cardiologists, that I used to read about. I got to meet Gene Braunwald. Wow, my goodness! I mean, Roman DeSantis. I mean, these are all great. It was, and just to meet the people and see, wow, what a great human being. Because there's some people that really they're complete humans. Like they're all these great doctors, who are also interested in the humanities. Think about it. Medicine is the ultimate humanity. You're really learning about the human condition, whether it's the circulation or the brain or the mind or the neurons. It's what makes us human. And all those people have interests in the arts and other things, because it's really trying to understand the human mind and what makes us go and what's important to us. And I think a lot of it makes somebody great is it's like understanding that. And so when you speak to somebody, try to understand what's important to them, and it's really by being grounded and aware. I think that makes you just a better human being.
Now you've accomplished so much already. I would say, do you have another big challenge that you're looking to conquer? What is your next big challenge?
Yeah, right. I mean, they always ask that. I do a lot of writing now. I guess I want to tell some more stories. There are a lot of stories along the journey of both medicine and acting. A lot of stories that people probably want to hear. So probably more storytelling, more writing. It's there have been moments. I mean, there have been moments in my career. I mean, it's. One time I'm in an office doing a consultation on somebody, and she's all, she thinks she's having a heart attack, but she wasn't. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she says to me, "Well, Clive Owen just turned down 007, and they want to give it to Jude Law, and I just can't live with that." And I said, so she was the producer, right? So I sat down and I said, "Well, I just saw this movie called Layer Cake, and there's this guy in it, Danny Craig, and he did this other movie, Road to Perdition. He's like a real actor." And she goes, "Gee, great. I got a doctor now telling me about acting." He goes, "Thank you." And she walks out. Turns out that week she was visiting with the same Irish director who came to see my play, because she was interviewing him to direct Casino Royale. And she said to him, "Who do you see as 007? He said, "Well, my friend Michael Gambon just did this movie, Larry King, this guy, Danny Craig." She goes, "This freaking doctor just pitched him to me 3 days ago. What's this town coming to?" She goes, "Well, maybe you should take a look at him." And literally, Danny Craig became 007. And
That's
so these
amazing.
moments that happen in my life, that I think these should be great stories to kind of get out there.
Now, what advice would you give any of our listeners that want to become the next Dr. Simonini, who listen to your story and are like, "Wow, that's amazing. He could pursue 2 of his passions. I want to do the same thing."
Yeah, it's you have to listen to your own music, and don't let anybody take you away from that. You really do, because it's a lonely world. It really is. Everyone hears their own song, and people may not agree with it. People may tell you, they try to push you into the mainstream or take you away. If something makes your heart sing, then you have to keep chasing it. And it's not about the result. It's never about the result. In acting, if you care about the result, you're not going to be a great actor. And in medicine, the result, sometimes you get there 90%. We always teach people the enemy of good is perfect, right? So know it's good enough, and not push for that perfect. That's when you get burned trying to do too much. So listen to that voice, and it's talk to people I read this once. Talk to people and get advice from people who are doing things you see yourself doing. Don't talk to people who are also wondering what to do, because you want to have the advice of somebody who's going there and has it and is open. That's really the key. To just believe in yourself and push and do the work. Obviously, do the work. And then it doesn't get handed to you. It's like and luck is the element of design. You became a neurosurgeon. It's one of the most competitive things to become. The match for that is really, really difficult, and most people don't get it. But you got it because you did the work. And it's not that, oh my God, a guy's so lucky he matched the so and so. But no, he did the work. If you did the work, if they did the work, it's like it's doing the work, and it'll happen. And you have to trust that. And that's really it.
Rico, what a great interview. I think that the take home points for any of our listeners would be that there's way too many constructs that are placed around us. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that, you can't do both. At the end of the day, you're an example of someone who had two passions and you followed both, right? And I think most people would have listened to your ideas early on and said, that's impossible. You're not going to be a doctor and an actor. Pick one or pick neither, pick something different. And you did both, and you did both at an extremely high level, which is even more impressive. And so I think for our listeners, understanding that really sky is the limit. You got to follow your passions. Like you said, it's about work ethic, it's about discipline. Nothing fell into your lap, but to put restrictions on yourself limits your success ultimately.
Agreed. I couldn't say it better myself. That's exactly right.
Well, listen, Rico, I know you got to go do rounds. You got to take care of patients. I'm going to do the same. But I appreciate your time. Amazing story, super inspirational.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Awesome, Rico. Have a great weekend.
Take care.